quick service platform Snabbit recently raised 19 million in a Series B funding round, which was led by Lightspeed. Now, existing investors, Elevation Capital and Nexus Venture Partners also participated in this round. The capital is set to be used to expand into new micro markets and strengthen its team. Now, Snabbit also looking to scale to over 200 micro markets in the next 9 months. In fact, we're joined in by Aayush Agarwal, founder and CEO of Snabbit. Aayush, a very good evening. Thank you for taking the time out and joining us here this evening on ET Now. In fact, talking about what has transpired for the company, 19 million in Series B is a strong signal. But just for our viewers to also better understand that, what key metrics or traction points do you believe tipped that scale for Lightspeed and returning investors as well?
So I think, thanks for having me, Nivedna. The major reason why we were able to raise large sum in a very short period of time is basically because of the traction that we received over the last 4 months. So just to give you some perspective, our scale increased from 5x in the last 4 months, and we've gone from just being operational in 1 micro market to 9 micro markets. And I think the trajectory that we've seen and the traction that we've seen as we've scaled new micro markets is what put us in a position where we could raise this new funding round.
All right, and Aayush, as you speak about that, of course, Snabbit promises home service delivery in under 10 minutes. But what's the infrastructure or tech backbone that has enabled that speed, and how defensible is that?
So we've gone ahead and built out an entirely full stack model where we are responsible for sourcing, screening, training, onboarding, and managing experts completely in-house. And the way we're able to run this is through a real-time allocation engine where we do real-time demand and supply matching of our experts with customers across dense hyperlocal network clusters, which is what forms the backbone of this entire ecosystem, and which is how we're able to do thousands of orders every single day.
In fact, as you're pointing that out, of course, you just said that in your opening remarks as well, that you're targeting 200 plus micro markets in under a year. But what's your framework for identifying a high potential micro market, and how do you in fact balance speed with operational control?
So I think it's a network design thing where we actually understand what kind of density of households is present across, say, very, very dense neighborhoods in metro cities. And we carve out these neighborhoods and we actually accurately predict what kind of demand are we expecting. And that's how we place supply very close to these demand clusters, such that real time, actually logistics within 10 minutes is possible purely out of a better and more optimized network design as opposed to anything else. And I think that's the way in which we're able to fulfill our promise of being really quick when it comes to providing services.
Talking about services as well, Aayush, how is on-demand home services evolving, and how are we looking at this market, especially in the next, let's say, 2 years, if not 5?
So this entire industry for the longest time has been completely undigitized and fragmented and largely offline, which is very different to how mobility or grocery or food delivery has turned out, where you've seen large consumer tech players completely rebuild infrastructure and change the way in which customers avail these products across their entire life. And I think what we're trying to see and what we're seeing now in services is a very, very similar trend, where we're going from a largely offline and fragmented space into a single tap click, as I call it, where you can avail home services at the click of a button whenever you want, which is very similar to revolution that you've seen in other industries within consumer internet.
And how did that idea actually even boom? What really led to the birth of this?
So I always wonder to myself, why is it easier to buy a car online as opposed to get someone to wash your dishes? For a largely simple service, it was exceedingly difficult to find a reliable and readily accessible solution. And growing up in Bangalore and Mumbai and facing these challenges day in and day out, that's what really led me to finding a solution that could really solve this problem for millions of other households around as well.
Absolutely. I think, that is in a conversation itself in terms of the fact that how you need to have reliable sources to do basic, chores as well. And that perhaps is given birth to a Snabbit. But let me ask you this, considering the fact that there's so much conversation about AI, automation, playing, a deeper role, not just in home services, but of course in the larger scheme of things. But for the industry in terms of home services, how are we looking at this and how future facing is Snabbit in that particular direction?
So I think for a year-old company, we've taken some major strides in ensuring that we're able to apply artificial intelligence within our tech stack, right from the way in which we source and screen our experts, and we actually are able to identify experts that would be high intent and high ability in terms of their willingness and their ability to do the work. We've leveraged AI across multiple touch points. Right from image recognition to the demand and supply matching that I just spoke about, where we actually leverage AI to not just AI, but even LLM models to actually project what kind of demand are we expecting in neighborhoods and place supply accordingly in a way that we're actually able to fulfill the demand in 10 minutes. So I think tech plays a very, very important role in the kind of logistics and supply chain that we've set up. And AI is a big enabler that we're seeing will actually shape up even more as we grow and scale.
All right, and you happen to, of course, mention Mumbai and Bengaluru, and they're two very different urban fabrics. You're currently present in both these cities. What did each city really teach you operationally, and and how are those learnings perhaps shaping your national expansion strategy?
So I think on the demand side, we saw very different use cases. So Mumbai, Powai, and the neighborhoods that we launched in were more homes to families, which had a very different behavior as when it came to services as opposed to Bengaluru, which was more tech crowd, young couples, working families. And I think that customer behavior was very different in terms of how they would even purchase services. So for example, the share of quick services in Bangalore is significantly higher as opposed to Bombay, where customers genuinely like to plan in advance, and we see much higher share of pre-book services in Mumbai. So that's definitely a nuance that was very, very apparent between these two metros. And on the supply side as well, we were able to tap into a vast migrant network of experts in Bangalore, whereas in Mumbai, we see that a lot of the folks that we're able to onboard, train, and source and then bring onto our platform actually are very native to the Mumbai ecosystem. So very, very distinct nuances both on the demand and the supply side, and definitely great learnings for us as we grow and scale.
Talking about great learning, as of course, talking about where you're present in these two cities, if we were to talk about what's the next city that you would like to target, anything on that front that you could share with us?
So I think we're very clear that we want to enter all the metros in India, and the top 8 metros are definitely on our list. The next big potential area that we look at is NCR, and I think that's where we will be launching next. But definitely a lot of scope to grow and expand, not just in terms of breadth of new micro markets, but also in terms of depth when it comes to existing cities like Mumbai and Bangalore. But yes, the other metro cities are definitely on the radar, and we'll be looking at them keenly.
All right, I'm a home girl from Bengaluru, so I missed using it back home. But now that you're saying it's Delhi NCR, perhaps because I work out of here, I might just happen to use it whenever you do launch it. But, I was talking about that hyper-local services, of course, can be margin thin and execution heavy. So how are you, in fact, solving for operational efficiency while, of course, scaling rapidly, which the company has seen?
So the way we do it is that we are the ones who came up with this category, and 15 months back no one was really building anything in this space, and we went through this 12-month space where we found answers, really in-depth answers into how to not just build efficiency in this model, but also sustainability and how we can actually make it profitable. Which is why if you'll see our journey, we've spent 12 months in just one micro market. We launched and built in Powai for an entire year before scaling to our next micro market. The idea obviously was to gain very, very in-depth answers, not just on the demand side and the supply side, but also about how to match it and how to actually build a profitable business on top of it, where you're able to make it a win-win-win, as I call it, where the customers really get convenient and reliable solutions, the experts get a dignified way of earning money, and the platform obviously benefits from making this work.
You happen to, of course, mention that being a untouched segment before. Why do you think that is? Because you
So,
have services for everything today. What do you think could have actually driven that?
so if you look at pre-Snabbit, there was literally zero hyperlocal on-demand offering for high-frequency services. So I think the reason for that is that such business models are actually a combination of team, cross execution, cross capital. If I were to look at the team, I had built another. I basically played a role in building out another e-commerce company that was in the hyperlocal business model. We cracked an on-demand hyperlocal model that was never touched before, and I think we got some really high quality investors to back us very early on. So the combination of getting the right team to execute well with the right capital backing has did not fall in place in this particular category. Not that there were not any attempts made, but I think that this entire on-demand hyperlocal service model has never been explored. And most of the other efforts were either to build agencies, digital agencies, or to build subscription models, both of which we tried very early on and realized won't scale.
And perhaps this formula has worked, which is the reason I asked you that is because, of course, the other aspect of this is now you work in a space with multiple competitors. So, how do you think about category leadership? Is it a race of network effects, operational scale, or just brand trust at the end of the day?
See, I think it's about having customer obsession at the very center of what we're building, and to keep growing and executing well. We've obviously built this category, launched it in some sense, and built out playbooks that other competitors can now obviously build on top of. And I think that's a great thing for the overall ecosystem. For us, it's all about just keeping our heads down and executing well. Now that we've obviously managed to raise some capital, so I think that's just the focus, and I think it's great that the ecosystem is getting built, and we'll probably see home services being digital as a very predominant way of customers actually using services.
Pointed out with 25.5 million, raised in less than 12 months as well. The other aspect is how do you prioritize between aggressive scaling and disciplined capital efficiency? If somebody would want to perhaps take notes as well as to how the business has done.
So it's about building playbooks in the very beginning, and then doubling down on those playbooks once you feel confident about it. So we were extremely frugal and mindful of the capital we spent in over the first 12 to 15 months. And the idea was to build out very, very strong playbooks in a very frugal manner, with a very lean team and with very limited resources. But now that we know exactly what we're doing, we know how this model works. It's about maintaining those same levels of efficiency and frugality, but replicating it across multiple micro markets. So I think it's just a matter of scale. But the idea is to obviously build rock solid clarity on what we're doing before we double down on it in a big way.
Talking about scaling as well, of course, you mentioned team expansion, but what does the ideal next layer of leadership look like for Snabbit as it, of course, moves from early growth to scale up mode?
So we're basically building out a layer of leaders that are going to come in from really specialized backgrounds and have executed really well in high tech consumer internet companies and startups that have scaled really well. So building out a tech and product leadership from some of the best tech and product companies. Similarly, on the operations side, we're very clear that execution is going to be a real moat as we build and scale, and as we maintain or extend this 1-year lead that we have in category creation for home services. And the single most important differentiator here will be the quality of our team, something I'm heavily invested in and spending a lot of time on. So you'll probably see a lot of really efficient, leaders that have achieved a lot in their careers joining us very soon.
All right, Aayush, on that note, I want to thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us here this evening. We wish you the best with everything that the company has in store going ahead. And like I said earlier, look forward to it when it does, of course, open in Delhi NCR as well. But for the moment, we leave the conversation at that because we're shifting our focus to more